Okay, tonight's speaker program includes Summer Schmaling. Summer needs no introduction, except the title of her talk, which I sort of schemed and provided, is simply, to use George Orwell's words, the power of facing. It's a power. And that's one of the skill sets that Summer brings to the table, because she's honest, she's seasoned, she's tough, and she calls it as it is, and she's a leader. So I'd like to have you join me in welcoming Summer Schmaling.
That's a pretty good introduction there, Don. Thank you. Thank you for having me here tonight and asking me to speak. When I originally wrote this speech, like this morning, I was like, wow, this is really dark. This is like so doomsday. I need a little like pep. So I added some things in here from my speech at the convention. If any of you watched that, you might recognize some of the things that I say. But it is really, when I talked to Don about this, it really is about facing the hard reality of what we are facing. So just bear with me while I get through this, because it's kind of a lot, but I think it's really important that people understand the magnitude of what we're up against here. So yes, my name is Summer. I live in Halifax with my 3 kids. I'm chairman of the Halifax Elementary School Committee, and I serve on the Silver Lake School Committee. And I basically ran for both seats after I said I wasn't going to, because the Liberals in my town really made me angry and my head wanted to pop off, so I decided to teach them a lesson and run for 2 seats this time instead of just 1, and I won them both. So that was good. So I wasn't intending on focusing on education when I decided to get involved in the public arena, but that's sort of where my path led. So in 2014, I got involved, ran for school committee on a platform opposing Common Core. And a lot of people, when they think about Common Core, they think about the crazy math with the boxes and, you know, changing the curriculum, but that's part of it. But the other part of it is the federal government's encroachment into our classrooms, and that's really why I was so against. I mean, yes, I was upset it was changing our academic standards, but I was upset that the federal government doesn't belong in our classroom. That's a state's issue, not a federal government issue, and they of course dangled the carrot of money and funding and worked their way into our schools in Massachusetts, you know, lowering our academic standards, even though over 100,000 people stood up and signed the petition to repeal Common Core, and then the SJC in Massachusetts threw it away, but they rewrote the pot question, so we're in good hands there. So, and Common Core, a lot of people think it's not in Catholic schools. It's in almost every school and in the majority of Catholic schools, unfortunately. So this once slow creep of government intrusion into our classrooms, I believe, has accelerated into the stripping of our parental rights, and I believe it's happening at a rapid pace. I often say when I speak that the silver lining to COVID was it brought the classroom into the kitchen. So it gave parents a front row seat into our children's daily school life. And I believe I can confidently say that many of us are here tonight because we have great concern for what we are witnessing in our children's classrooms. Everything from the forced masking of our children to the sexually explicit literature our high schoolers are being asked to read without our permission, I might add, to asking what our children's pronouns are as young as elementary school. And I don't know if many of you know this, but I will add this little tidbit that if a child goes to an elementary school, or a child goes to any school, but even in elementary school, and identifies themselves as something in the school has to honor that regardless of what the parents say. So I hope everybody understands that. And if Susie goes to school and says, I want to be Johnny and identify as a boy, the school has to call that child Johnny, even though at home the parents say, you are Susie. I just want to make that clear, that that's happening right now. I believe this has gotten completely out of control, and there needs to be some major changes before any of this gets any better. The focus of education is no longer on academics. We are facing an enormous learning gap in our school committee meetings, Department of Education meetings, Massachusetts Association of School Committee meetings, Massachusetts Teachers Association meetings, and the superintendent groups have been predominantly focused on the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the classroom and understanding critical race theory. Many towns are facing a strained budget in these times of economic uncertainty, yet somehow our districts are finding the resources to hire DEI coordinators. Are these really our priorities? If you talk to the majority of parents around here, I would think that they are not. Unfortunately, the directive of this narrative and misguided focus of our schools is coming from the top. Districts are being told by the Attorney General's office that they must have anti-bias training or they will be threatened with lawsuits. The AG, what I refer to, the AG as the Attorney General, offers a list of approved trainings hosted by such groups as the Anti-Defamation League, which was referenced earlier. Unfortunately, this literally ties the hands of our school committees and our superintendents, even if they oppose such organizations from coming into our districts. These trainings and webinars hosted by the MASC, which is the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, and the MTA, the Teachers Association, are focused on diversity, bias, and understanding privilege in the classroom. The MASC and the Department of Education are educating school committee members on how to deal with, and I quote, unruly parents who ask a lot of questions at meetings, and essentially how to shut down our public voice. I witnessed this myself when I sat in an MASC webinar as a school committee member and started to ask questions on DEI and CRT, and they literally just shut me down. They muted my mic, wouldn't respond to me in the chat. It was like, boom, you're done. And our district pays dues to the MASC, so I am a member, and they just don't want to have the conversation. If you go on the MASC's social media, a quick glance will show you that you will find posts on the Roe versus Wade decision, how dress codes are now gender discrimination, and the politics of the MASC are very clear. And frankly, I don't care what side of the issue you stand on. I cannot fathom why this is a priority discussion for school boards at a time when our kids are finally getting back to normal and have had an entire year, if not more, of learning loss. As we saw at DESE, the Department of Education, during the pandemic, they have no qualms about taking the authority of school committees away and ultimately superseding the rights of parents who have elected them. The perfect example is when they mandated masks during COVID. By the way, California is now putting masks by mandate on their school children during summer school, and if you don't think that's coming to Massachusetts next, you've got another thing coming. They abuse the power that we have given them. And they take a little bit of control that we have here at the local level, and they strip it away, ultimately eroding our rights as parents. They are doing the same thing that they did with COVID with the DEI agenda. The legislature is fully involved in this takeover. Senate Bill 2515, an act mitigating COVID-19 transmission among children and families, mandates the masking of your child while they're at school, regardless of what the parent or what the school committee says. House Bill 4813, an act relative to vaccines and preventing future disease outbreaks, removes the religious exemption option from public schools, all schools, stripping the rights that we have as parents who use this outlet when making vaccination decisions for our children. Bills focused on DEI in education, such as House Bill 584 and Senate Bill 365, an act relative to anti-racism, equity, and justice in education, was in the Senate just this past March, along with Bill 2748, an act relative to educator diversity. This legislation addresses racial and cultural bias training and educator professional development. This is accompanied by a bill in the Senate, number 304, legislation to promote racially and culturally inclusive K-12 curriculum, accompanied by Senate Bill 310, which is legislation relative to the LGBTQ plus inclusive curriculum. The point is, it's coming from all directions. It's coming from the AG, it's coming from the legislature, it's coming at us from every angle. Funneling this DEI political and social agenda, because let's be honest, that's what it is, through the AG's office and the legislature takes this fight to the highest levels. I truly believe that their goal is to ultimately strip away any parental input in our children's school day and turn our little children into little social justice activists. We need to not only ensure that we have representation on our local school boards, but we have it on Beacon Hill as well. We elect the people to represent we, the people. And I, for one, do not like the agenda that they are currently pushing, and there needs to be pushed back at every level to replace these officials. Here is how I see the political structure come into play. We need an ally in the governor's office. We saw during the pandemic that what the governor's role is in instituting mandates. We need an ally in the governor's office. The governor also appoints the Board of Education. The Board of Education votes and approves the Education Commissioner. We all witnessed what the Board of Education and the Commissioner did during COVID when they stripped away our rights and the rights of our children, and even went as far as making medical decisions for our families during the pandemic. The MASC, the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. These board members of the MASC have a direct line to legislatures and the Commissioner. This board is elected by other MASC members annually at the MASC conference. So if your district is paying the dues, they can go to the conference and they can elect these MASC board members, and these people have a direct line and influence to the governor, the commissioner, and the Department of Education. All you have to do is file papers as a member and do like the nomination process. The Attorney General. This is probably the most crucial office that I feel that we need to get a hold on. In some instances, parents are not satisfied with the way that behavior is being handled in the public school systems. Importance of teaching our children empathy and respect and preventing bullying in our schools. Coupled with the fact that we have socially isolated our children and aren't even addressing the social and emotional ramifications of the pandemic, the Attorney General is utilizing their Civil Rights Division and coming full force at school districts, tying the hands of superintendents, school committees, and parents. Our children are vulnerable, they're impressionable, and they're defenseless. It is our duty and our obligation to fight and protect them. When I first stood up for my children, and yours, 10 plus years ago, I felt alone, as I'm sure many of you do. The attacks were relentless, both, I'm gonna get a little emotional, both on me personally, and I know that my children have felt the ramifications of this firsthand. As I continue this fight, I am finding that I'm not alone, and that is very evident by everyone here tonight. I understand that not everyone has the fight in them to attack publicly, and if you are not comfortable with that role, then find a leader who is voicing the same concerns that you have and support them. Conversely, if you do have the fire in you and you are ready to blow, do it. Do it now. Be the leader that many others are so desperate for, and know that we will all be standing behind you. We have the ability to force this change if we unite and we go strong. We cannot rest at the local level. I know this is a very locally driven, but that starts there. Everything starts local. Yes, the local level is important, but increasingly, they are stripping our rights away from our local elected officials. This needs to be a very broad approach. We need elected officials that support parental rights and individual freedoms in every level of government. Until we have allies in the governor's office, the attorney general's office, the state house, and on our school boards, our rights will continue to deteriorate, and our schools will remain on this path of attempting to create an army of little social justice activists. Personally, I'm exhausted. I am not sure, I've kind of like lost a lot of faith. I am not sure that this state as a whole will support candidates that believe in parental rights and believe in focusing on academics instead of activism. I stopped calling our public schools and then now call them government schools. I have decided as a parent that I'm going to spend this next year finding an alternative education for my boys. My son will be in 8th grade next year, and after learning that the Anti-Defamation League will be in my district next year, even after I sounded the alarm at our school committee meetings that they will be sorry for doing this. It is coming at the direction of the Attorney General, and I just cannot subject my child to that indoctrination when he reaches high school. My littlest one, he's 5, he'll be in kindergarten next year, and I'm actively looking into considering a homeschool co-op option. I feel like government education is a sinking ship, and I don't want to be on it any longer. I am realizing that the enemy I am spending all of my time fighting, I'm spending all of my energy fighting the enemy, and it may be better spent creating a positive alternative. Homeschooling co-ops are popping up everywhere. Camp Norse right here in Kingston is looking to expand to offer a K-12 education, and JEM Learning in Duxbury was developed during the pandemic, and I talked to the woman who developed it, and they firmly stand in parental rights. They are offering a K-6 alternative to public education. Sparhawk Learning Academy is all the way in Millis, but they stood firmly in parental rights during the pandemic and never mandated masking of any of their students. These options, I believe, will continue to grow. So I'm personally going to shift my energy into creating alternatives. This will be a long and hard road, but I believe it's a road worth taking. And unless we start to see some major shifting in the political arena in this state, ASAP, it may be our only option. In summary, we have two options, maybe three. We unite, we stand and fight, and we create an alternative. Or one is we unite, we stand and fight the system. Two is we create an alternative. Or three is we try and do both. Because you never know, we might be successful at both. I don't think I'll ever give up. I never thought I'd be standing here, honestly, and the fire is in me, so I can't walk away from it. But I just don't want my children participating in this social experiment. If enough of us find or create an alternative, the government school system ship will sink, predominantly through funding, but we won't be on it. And I don't mean to come across as discouraged, but truthfully, after a decade of being in this arena, I kind of am. At the very least, right now, all we can do is get out and vote. Ask your candidates who are running for office what their stance is on parental rights and education. Educate your friends and family about what is happening behind closed doors of the classroom. Keep spreading the message. Maybe our force is powerful enough, and enough people will see the light, and this will invoke change. Listen, we are all here today because the mama and the papa bear in all of us has been poked. It's time to rise up and take our babies back before they are gone forever. This heinous agenda that they are parting on our children every day in school is wrong. They are grooming our children. It's an uncomfortable word, but they're doing it. They're grooming our children, and once parents realize what is really happening here, it will never survive. So we must keep asking questions and demanding transparency. We must keep talking about this and doing what we're doing tonight. We must keep educating others and spreading the message of what is really going on here. If we shine the light and wake up enough people, even right here in Massachusetts, this gross indoctrination of our children will not survive. But in order to do this, it is absolutely imperative that we unite in this effort. Even if you do not have children in the school system anymore or yours are grown, our freedom, our rights, our personal liberties, and the future of this great nation is at stake. So the time to act is right now.